Quebec is a unique place. It's a vast, densely populated French-speaking province within a much larger, predominantly English-speaking country.
Oui.
The people of the province are amongst the first Europeans to arrive in North America. It's a province which voted not once, but twice on whether it should leave Canada, and both times it narrowly failed. With their national holiday coming up in a few days, let's talk about Quebec. Hi, I'm Tristan. This is Step Back. Subscribe, hit the bell notification to get history.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Si c'est ta première fois, moi, je m'appelle Onel. Ça, c'est Tekla avec le t-shirt blanc. Et derrière, c'est Thelma. Aujourd'hui, on va voir l'histoire du Québec.
Ooh.
Okay, so if you're joining for the first time, our reaction video today is about the history of Quebec. You know, on connaît que Québec, c'est la seule province au Canada qui parle seulement le français officiellement. Et on sait que New Brunswick, c'est bilingue, une province qui est bilingue. Et le reste parle aussi quelques pourcentages de français et l'anglais. Donc, nous aussi, on parle 20% de français et 80% d'anglais.
Anglais.
Yeah, so we speak a little bit of French and then we speak enough English.
Enough.
Enough English.
How can you English?
So, donc, merci beaucoup. Il faut vous abonner s'il vous plaît et liker et partager notre page. Et aussi, on va créer un GoFundMe après pour savoir si on peut arriver au Canada
Ooh.
pour rendre visite aux gens du Canada.
Oui.
Oui, merci. Bon, on y va.
Every week. This region, which would become Quebec, has been lived upon in some form or another for well over 12,000 years. It's vast territory occupied by a large variety of societies from several diverse nations banded together in the Haudenosaunee, called by the French the Iroquois Confederacy in the south, to Inuit people living in Quebec's frozen north.
Oh, look at how good they look. And they're nice dresses.
It looks like Chinese.
Wow.
Chinese, right?
Yeah, look like ils sont comme les gens, les Chinois.
Oui, les Chinois.
Les Japonais. Oui, ils sont aussi comme les Japonais.
Oui, moi-même, il y a le temps qu'elle ne connaît pas si...
Si c'est les Japonais ou bien c'est les Canadiens.
Oui.
At least 10 indigenous nations that we know about lived in this region. What we know about this period comes from a mix of archaeological evidence and the oral traditions passed down through the nations that lived here.
Wow.
The first people to arrive in Quebec came around the year 11,000 BCE. The people who entered are still quite a mystery. Only a few pieces of archaeological evidence shows that they existed at all. They were Paleolithic people, direct ancestors of some of the first souls to cross the Bering Strait land bridge from Siberia, give or take a few centuries.
Wow.
The Quebec they called home would be alien to us today. This was still the age of mammoths, giant sloths, and all that. Quebec, however, was still mostly covered in glaciers in this period. It was not until they began to retreat about 10,000 years ago that the population would increase in a meaningful way. With the retreating of the glaciers, the climate of Quebec began to become a bit more hospitable. We see this connected to a population increase in the region. The Iroquois and Algonquin-speaking peoples began to show up in the province in this era. We find specialized tools such as fishing hooks from this period. It wasn't for many thousands of years, though, before farming came to Quebec. The first farms seeming to show up around 1,300 years ago, with significant crops made of beans.
What's this?
I don't know what that is. It looks like beans.
Corn?
Corn and
Corn
beans.
that you have to remove and plant.
Yeah. I don't know what that is. Mais si vous connaissez, pardon, aidez-nous, on veut savoir qu'est-ce que c'est.
Farms seeming to show up around 1,300 years ago, with significant crops made of beans, corns, marrow, and sunflowers. Sometime in the 12th century, legendary figures Hiawatha and Deganawida, along with a partially unknown figure named Jigon Sase, formed an alliance between 5 tribes: the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, and Seneca. The first story of the founding of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy will be sidelined for this video because it's a bit more of an upstate New York story, but also because I think it should be its own video. Comments if you want that. Now, let's talk about the first Europeans to arrive in Quebec. Sometime shortly after the first voyage of Christopher Columbus down in the Caribbean, a French sailor brought back several captured indigenous people, indicating that there was land in the northern Atlantic. A French explorer named Jacques Cartier took up this interest.
I remember when we were doing the history of Canada, they mentioned this Jacques Cartier.
mentioned his name inside.
I have a close friend, like my close friend, the same bench in secondary school. His nickname is Cartier.
Cartier.
Yeah. His nickname, like my closest friend, like we sat on the same bench from Form 1 to Form 5. His name is Cartier.
Cartier.
Yeah, Cartier, like this guy's name.
Wait, Cartier is Cotter.
That's his name. This guy's name is Jean Cartier.
Oh.
Me, this is important. There's 1,000 streets and buildings named after him in Quebec. On June 24th of 1534, he and his crew landed in the modern-day Gaspé Peninsula, and in a very European fashion, claimed the entirety of other people's territory as the property of the King of France. The next year, he sailed to locations such as modern-day Quebec City and Montreal, meeting the St. Lawrence Iroquoian people living there. Over the next 6 years, the French government didn't do much, not seeing colonization of the region as a top priority. For a few years, it was just a place where fishermen would go for cod and whale oil. They would trade their metal goods with the indigenous people of the St. Lawrence for fancy furs, which would renew interest in the region. Smelling profit, King Francois gave a French noble named, oh boy, Jean-François de la Roque de la Roberval the task of setting up a colony in these lands he called New France. He failed at the job, and it wouldn't be until the year 1608 Quebec City would be founded by Samuel de Champlain, another person many things are named after in Quebec. It was the first attempt to make a permanent settlement. Now, this was not your typical colonization story at first. The juice of this colony would be the trade of furs, especially beaver furs, which were becoming all the rage back in Europe.
You know that the national animal of Canada is beaver.
Yeah, I do.
So they're doing trade in beaver fur. Okay. That's it. Boom.
Some of the most common people to operate here were freelance traders and hunters called les coureurs des bois. There wasn't much official exploration, but many of these freelancers did it themselves. That being said, its remote location and lack of local knowledge made the first few years pretty deadly. A lot of the most valuable land taken by the crown was passed on down to the Catholic Church. While many English people crossed the Atlantic to get away from feudalism, in New France, the church more or less transplanted it. It was a system of people working their land under something called the seigneurial system. Because of this, for a lot of Quebecois history, the Catholic Church would be extremely powerful. The colony had some difficulties keeping active. A war in England blocked supplies down the St. Lawrence River, and they even lost the territory to the English for a few years before peace could be restored. By the end of the 1600s, there were under 20,000 French settlers all the way from the Mississippi to Newfoundland. A little over half of them were farmers. Many came only for a few seasons to fish and trade furs and then go back to France. Women rarely crossed, and those who did were mostly nuns. It got so bad, the king had to incentivize and pay for about 800 young French women to go over, with hopes they'd get married and convince people to stay in New France. There are a lot of legends about these girls, and claiming lineage to these filles du roi, or the king's daughters, is...
What type of fille du roi? What does that mean? Fille du roi. King's daughters. Yeah. C'est fille du roi. That's kind of terrible. Fille du roi.
a small part of having real French-Canadian cred. Still, New France existed as a backwater place only good for sending resources back to France. The story was very different down south. By the mid-1700s, the British had grown their North American colonies into pretty much its own country. New France had 10 times the size of those 13 colonies, but only about 1/10 of the population. This was a situation when France and England went to war in 1754. This global conflict, called the 7 Years' War, or French and Indian War to the Americans, would feature several significant battles in Quebec. With control of the Atlantic, the British were able to overpower the French in North America. It came to a head with a massive siege of Quebec City. The troops met in a climactic clash known as the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. Both the leader of the French, Louis-Joseph de Montcalm, and the British general James Wolfe died in the battle. The British then proceeded to occupy New France, and the people living there would never be part of the French Empire again. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris, which ceded all of Canada to the British, and King George III set out to put a government there. This is a significant event in Quebecois history, especially to Quebec nationalists. To them, the Plains of Abraham was when they lost everything, and their oppression by the English began. The Plains are now a park. There's music festivals there and stuff.
Wow.
Seriously, go to Quebec City if you haven't. It's gorgeous. The British would rule over Quebec for the next century. The Quebecois didn't seem to mind a whole lot as long as they were allowed to speak French and practice Catholicism. They also, to this day, were allowed to keep the French legal system. It was the first time any territory other than Quebec City got the name Quebec. All of this formalized in a document in 1774 called the Quebec Act.
That speaks something. In Cameroon, we also have two legal systems, the common law system and the civil law system.
Yeah.
Common law is more of the English law system. The Anglophone section of the country is understood to be practicing the common law system, though it's overpowered by the French civil law system. Mainly the difference between the civil law and the common law is that civil law, you're assumed guilty until proven innocent, and common law, you're assumed innocent until proven guilty. We wish there couldn't be anything more opposite than that in this life when it comes to legal stuff. So yeah, I don't know if the people in Quebec still practice the French law, which is the civil law till the day. So
I feel like that law is not really that good for me.
The civil law, assuming that someone is guilty until proven innocent. Yeah, I think that provision is bad because anybody can just accuse you. Yeah. So anyways, we just want to know, but that's what we have here in our country.
Yeah, so please let us know which province you're watching from. Are you watching from Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia? We just like to know.
Is it that every person that went to Quebec was speaking French, or part of them were speaking English before they adapted to the French?
Quebec was colonized by French people, so they had already grown to be
French
speaking
people that
French.
went there.
Yeah. So they have grown to speak French, right? It's almost as if asking if everybody in Bamenda speak English. They were colonized by English people, so that they are speaking English, but there are some people in Bamenda that speak French.
Yes.
And on the French side here in Yaoundé, there are some people that speak English. Yeah. But Quebec is understood to be speaking predominantly French.
Yeah, but that notwithstanding, people still speak English in Quebec.
That's exactly what we say. So, bon, on veut savoir, on apprend aussi. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Another reason the Quebecois got so many concessions is because trouble was brewing down south. In 1775, the American Revolutionary War began, and Quebec was in the crosshairs of the American military. Their goal was to, quote, liberate the French from British rule. During the campaign in Quebec, they even managed to get a few regiments of Quebecois troops to fight for them. The Americans conquered Montreal, but were defeated at Quebec City and forced to retreat. Don't worry, they would try again in the War of 1812. After the war, Quebec and the rest of Canada became a landing place for many Loyalist refugees. Most of them were settled where I am now in what would become Southern Ontario. Since they were a sizable English colony in a French-speaking province, they successfully broke off into what would eventually become Ontario, but in this period called them Lower and Upper Canada. This also oddly resulted in the only elected body in the colonial government in Lower Canada, which would later become Quebec. Within it, a nationalist liberal political party called the Parti Canadien led rebellions in 1837 and 1838. The The uprising was driven by an extreme group of them known as the Parti Patriote. They didn't succeed in much but the imposition of martial law in 1840. It resulted in a lot of reforms and tighter control by the English colonial administration. This was also a period when many new immigrants from the British Isles began to arrive in Quebec, creating a sizable Anglophone minority that exists to this day. To further curb the power of the French Canadians, the High Commissioner of Canada, Lord Durham, united Upper and Lower Canada with a single governing body in Montreal, which then was moved to Toronto after a mob set the seat of government on fire in 1849. Then we get to the big year, 1867. After some negotiation, the colonial provinces of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Canada joined into a new country called the Dominion of Canada. This was when Quebec finally got the name of Quebec. Canada was now a country. Kinda. It took care of its own affairs, but foreign policy was still under the control of the United Kingdom. Quebec, the Canadian province.
It's almost as if you got married in your father's house. You still decide when you come in and go.
What?
Though you are a father, you have a wife.
Mm-hmm.
You still under your father's house roof.
Why don't you don't come home after 6 p.m.,
Yeah.
8 p.m.?
So you need to hurry up. Even if you don't want to be a good husband, you still get home early. Makes sense. And it would have been a very complicated thing for me. I don't understand how a country has its own foreign policy controlled by another country. It's crazy.
The Canadian province was dominated mainly by the church. Most hospitals, charities, and French-language schools were run by it. The Quebecois people protested when they detected anti-French oppression in the execution of Louis Riel in the famous Métis Rebellion in Saskatchewan. A future video, I'm sure. Quebec politics often was about trying to gain autonomy for the French population and curb the centralization of Canada. There were a lot of victories, as Canada is a remarkably decentralized country today. Canada's first French-Canadian Prime Minister was Wilfrid Laurier, elected in 1896. He fought the influence of the church in Quebec and dealt with French opposition to Canada's participation in the Boer War. This would be even stronger when Quebec rioted against conscription during the First World War. Hey folks, I just want to duck in for a second to let you know that Step Back grows through word of mouth. So if there's a friend, family member, teacher, or internet community you know might like a Step Back video, be sure to show them. Canada and Quebec also took a hard hit from the Great Depression. Quebec saw a massive move to reactionary politics. Quebecois people doubled down on their loyalty to the church, and Quebec nationalism became a traditionalist movement trying to keep the old ways against a changing world. The people of Quebec elected a man named Maurice Duplessis for 15 years, who deepened church and state relations and fought with unions and intellectuals. Because of his doubling down on traditionalist values, Quebec was insular, abortion was illegal, and divorce would be outlawed until 1968. However, baby boomer Quebecois would fight this. During the 1960s, Quebec went through something called the Quiet Revolution. During this period of reform, Quebec secularized, liberalized, and tied these changes to a new Quebec identity. The province signed an international agreement with Paris, and the Quebecois people protested a visit from the Queen. And of course, with a spike in nationalism, we get a spike in violence. In 1963, the Front de Libération du Québec, or the FLQ, set off bombs in Montreal. This escalated until 1970 when the FLQ kidnapped a cabinet minister and a British diplomat, killing the former. Prime Minister Trudeau, not him, his dad, I thought we solved this in the last Quebec video, imposed martial law on Quebec and invoked the War Measures Act. Nationalism,
So that things were going pretty nasty at this point. What? I really like to see Canada stay together. I don't know. But I'm not in Canada to know the political situation there. But it's kind of just aching to think that some part of Canada will just get away.
Yeah, I would just be like, it's just, I don't know how I feel about
Separate,
it.
yeah.
But for me, I would say they should stay together.
Yeah.
They should stay back together. There's no need to separate and go start all over again.
Yeah. No, guys, please. Il faut rester ensemble.
Oui.
Oui. Eh,
Yeah, Riena Ganye control.
no, tell them that there's nothing to gain. They have what they want to gain. Is man, we don't know. Honestly, we are not on ground to know why people want to separate from Canada. But as people from outside, comme les gens, les étrangers, on veut vous voir ensemble, on ne veut pas voir. Oui, on veut pas que vous séparez. Donc, we're just talking like foreigners. We don't know what you guys want there. Please stay together for that nice map you guys have there. Let us say the maple syrup is coming from Canada. The simulators, flight simulators are constructed in Canada, not just in Quebec. We know they come from Quebec.
Yeah, most of the maple syrup, right?
However, was still on the rise. A new minister of culture was founded with the goal of preserving French culture. In 1968, the nationalist Parti Québécois was elected and still exists to this day. Support for more nationalism and separatist ideas circulated throughout the late 60s and 70s, resulting in a failed referendum on separation in 1980. In the early 80s, Canada brought home and ratified its own constitution. All 9 provinces, except for Quebec, signed it. Whenever talks of the Canadian Constitution arose, Quebec's status within Canada would become a central issue. In the 80s and early 90s, the Mulroney Progressive Conservative government in Ottawa tried to bring Quebec into the fold with constitutional accords in Meech Lake and Charlottetown, but these quickly broke down. In 1995, there was a second referendum, and it only failed by the slimmest of margins. I have a whole video about this, so if you want more info, go there. Indigenous people today live in small, scattered communities focused primarily on rural areas around the province. Though this isn't always the case. The Mohawk Reserve of Kanawake is pretty much a suburb of Montreal. Like the rest of Canada, the treatment of Indigenous peoples is a horrific national crime, which we should be pointing out at every possible opportunity. For example, let's talk about the Oka crisis. In 1990, the city of Oka decided to expand a golf course over a plot of disputed land which belonged to the Mohawk Nation. This was done without a single environmental study or attempt at historic preservation. Mohawk community members rallied to defend their territory by blockading access to the land. The Quebec police responded with tear gas and concussion grenades. A firefight broke out, and the Mohawk people managed to drive back the police. The RCMP, our federal police, were called in and also overwhelmed. They even called in the military to make sure that golf course on Indigenous sovereign land could be built. A peace deal was eventually kinda reached. The golf course was canceled and the land purchased by the federal government. This Oka crisis made news around the country, and in a brief and in this country way too few and far between moment, we saw a little bit of the horrible conditions and violations we inflict on our Indigenous communities. Hey Justin, how you liking that oil pipeline? In more recent times, Quebec has lost a lot of its support for separation. The federal government passed a motion declaring the Québécois the status of a nation within Canada. The Liberal government in Quebec.
So my own question is like, if as they want to separate, if they separate, where do they go to? Will they remain in Quebec, or they have to go somewhere again to start building the Quebec?
Go where again?
Maybe away from Canada as a whole.
And go to where to go and create their country now?
I don't know.
They're already in Quebec, so if they separate, they remain in Quebec and
But
form a
the
country.
country will be growing. Where will the people fit in?
Who? The people in Quebec?
Yes.
You know the size of Quebec? Quebec is bigger than France. Quebec itself is bigger than France.
But most of those places are not, how do you say, habited. Yes.
Habitable.
Habitable.
But again, the country is still big.
They're not habitable because of some of the reasons that we know.
Yeah.
So when the country now grows big, what happens?
But the people will still be there. The people cannot fit in. The country cannot be too small for the people. The land that the usable land for them. In fact, all the land is usable for them. It's just that not all the land is used for agriculture, but all of it is still usable. Because you can extract oil, you can extract minerals, you can extract different things from there, make money out of it. You can still construct anywhere you want. So the country is bigger. Quebec is big enough. It's not like okay, if you were even thinking of them moving, where would they go? So you want a country, you separate and then go somewhere whose land because everywhere is belongs to a country.
Come to Cameroon.
No, they can't. I think that's the second most populated province in Canada, if I'm not making a mistake.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So they have the land size and they have the technology. They have everything to be a country. It's just I would like to see that. Yeah, I get to someday and see that the part of Canada has voted to separate. I'll be extremely sad. It'd be a very sad thing to do. Please, please stay together. But I like, as the narrator said, the separation sentiment has actually reduced in Canada. So it's a good one.
The federal government passed a motion declaring the Quebecois the status of a nation within Canada. The Liberal government in Quebec tried to raise tuition on universities, which resulted in massive protests under something called the Red Square movement. I remember this well because I was in student government in Quebec at the time. It led to the separatist Parti Québécois getting elected, with the province's first female premier, Pauline Marois. I gotta put my cards on the table, I wasn't a fan. What with the trying to choke my small English university out of existence through austerity, and blatantly racist Islamophobic laws, but whatever. Her government only lasted a couple years anyway. And so yeah, we come to today. Quebec is having issues dealing with a rise in far
Bonsoir, papa. Yeah, encore de travail. Okay. Okay. They want to see you.
Who is it?
They are for that day.
They'll cross the road.
Yes.
Tell them I'm working. I'll come after.
Quelle va venir après?
right groups, especially those of the neo-Nazi and Islamophobic variety. A white supremacist committed a mass shooting of a mosque in 2017, and Quebec goes to the polls this year with an expected wave of right-wing support. But yeah, for all it is, Quebec is a fantastic part of Canada. Its unique culture and place in the country is core to what Canada is, and so I wanted to tell their story. If there's another province I should do, just ask in the comments. I want to thank 12 Tone for the theme song as well as
Okay, if you wonder what is happening, the first time I left was a kid was making some really loud noise outside. Had to go stop the kids. Now my neighbor is knocking. He wants something. I don't know what, but when I'm done, I'll go find out.
Yes.
So, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
C'était une très belle histoire de Québec.
Vraiment intéressant.
Ouais, c'est très intéressant. Et aussi, la prochaine fois, on va essayer de parler plus en plus de français. Oui, on ne connaît pas bien le français, mais comme
On apprend toujours.
on apprend toujours, on essaye chaque fois. Bon, merci. Thank you so much for watching. If our French wasn't good, we apologize. Sorry, And
See you
in the next
video.
video. Yes, let's go.